Wednesday. It is a magical Wednesday here on Raw. Mike Richards. It is fantastic. The madness has started. Brought to you by RCCN DKI in Calgary from the DKI studios. Will Strickland, Big Will, a Rice alumnus.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that.
We're not going to talk about that today?
No.
Okay.
No, we're not going to have that. But someone said this to me before I got started, and they were noting the colors that I was rocking today. Blue know it, and we'll get in that later on.
All right. We're also going to contact Leo Routens on the road. He's going to join us. Of course, his Orangemen trying to sneak their way into the tournament. A lot of people, there's a lot of people mad. I think overall they did a pretty good job. You might even probably make some arguments about some of the seedings. I think that's more where there are some areas of concern. But at the end of the day, you got to play who you got to play. So if you're going to beat them, go out there and beat them. So we're going to do that today. We're going to go over all the regions in the game. So if you need help with your bracket, it is here. So we're thrilled about that. Once again, today's bracketology show brought to you by RCCN. That's Rocky Cross Construction North in Calgary, our good friends. Thanks, Al. We appreciate it. This is going to be an outstanding show here today. And again, for all your needs, you need Will. Do you need Will on this one?
Oh, I don't know.
What can Will do for you?
The champ is here.
Oh, the champ is here.
Okay.
Wow.
So we're going to get ready. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, outside of all the NFL,
Shenanigans
cuts and trades and new contract signings and, the NCAA, and it is March. This weather's crazy today. The madness is here. I'm ready to go.
Leo Routen goes, are we going to talk about the FBI? Is that what the show's about?
Only criminals talk like that, Leo. I'm just letting you know. Shout out to Bernie Fine.
Yeah, well, and I think when I take a look at what was done in Pac-12, so you've got a Arizona team that, man, I'm telling you that. I'm sure that considering they have maybe one of the best players in all of college basketball, but what do you think, Will, when it comes to, and people aren't sure, people in Canada probably guess more, and including myself, that when you're part of a big-time program, and I mean a big program, one that's going to go to the dance, one that maybe not on par with football because very few basketball programs are, but when you're from that kind of lineage, I guess, when you step onto the court, if your coach is under suspicion, if your program is under suspicion, sometimes it is a player. If you're getting to this time of year, does it change the way in which you're preparing to go on the floor? Does it bother the players? Let's say if they believe the coach is being investigated by the FBI, or as an athlete, are you only worried about what goes on the court? And because you may have only spent maybe 1 or 2 years, a lot of guys 1 year, does it change the way in which they're going to play the game?
I don't think so. I don't even know if Arizona should be in the tournament, truth told. I mean, Sean Miller got caught with a murder weapon, and they still let him walk. He's like, I can go now? Yeah. Like, if you have a kid, if you have the suspicion, if it smells like a kid got a sandwich from a booster, they suspend him. Mm-hmm. The coach is audibly telling you, give DeAndre Ayton $100,000. I go, well, we're not really sure that's Sean Miller. Stop playing. So, to me, it's disrespectful in a way to the idea. But then again, maybe it's not. Maybe that's what the NCAA and the March Madness tournament is all about. It's all about that dollar. And if you can have one of the top players in the country, and arguably a number one pick in the draft next year.
Yes. Yeah.
Or this year, I should say. Yeah. Then you're going to have them in the tournament. Regulations and rules be damned. So, I have some issue with that, but I don't think it affects the players. The coach might be more affected than anything, but he's going to try and walk that off. The kids already know, hey, look, we know he got his check, and we're still playing basketball. We come out to play basketball. So I don't think the players are going to be affected as much. What I do look at is that Arizona has been really up and down with one of the top players in the country.
Yeah.
And so people can point to it the first time they go into trouble in a game, is Clark Kellogg going to say, hey, maybe it's because – no, he's not going to do that because they've been instructed in CBS, CBS, whatever it is, whatever network you're looking at, True TV, whatever it is, they've been instructed not to talk about this thing in depth. They're not going to do a deep dive on it. But when the kids fall into some trouble in Arizona, if they have – and when I say trouble on the court, you know, they fall behind a little bit, you know, it looks sketchy, then they'll bring that up. But I don't think the kids really care that much.
Does Buffalo cover the number of 9 against Arizona?
Buffalo's better than what people think.
That's what
Buffalo's a very good program this year.
Buffalo is better than what people think.
Now, they haven't really played any big-time teams because they play in the MAC, but
I don't know what that means because it's one and done.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about college basketball this season in particular is that there are no dominant teams that have ruled the landscape all year long.
Right.
So Buffalo has as good an opportunity to catch a wounded or shaky or vulnerable like Arizona team at this time of year.
Okay. Strickland down for the Bulls plus the 9. Okay.
You notice did you write in invisible ink? I'm just wondering.
Come on, theater of the mind.
Hey, it sounds good. It sounds good. But no. While Arizona I think Arizona will win the game.
Sure.
Buffalo will put up a real fight and can scare those guys.
That'd be nice. I'd like to see it.
Yeah, Bobby Hurley was only there for like a cup of coffee. I mean, we talked to him when we were on TSN 1050. Remember, Bobby came on.
He was great.
And talked about his brother and obviously talked about his dad, who's a legendary high school coach. But the fraternity of coaching and the way it works sometimes is real difficult because if you want to climb, you don't stay long. Like I go to your house, I recruit your son, we go back, and then I'm gone. And that's just kind of how it is. Football's not much better. That's real tough. I think that because of the rules, and I'm just going to skip back to football for a second. Brian Kelly came in, so now head coach of Notre Dame, and he had that. I was at the Cincinnati. So he's coaching at Cincinnati, and a lot of people might know Zach Caleros. He was on that team, but Tony Pike was the starting quarterback. They're getting to their biggest moment of most of these young men's career because they much to popular belief they all don't go pro. Okay, it's like 2.5% of these guys are going to go pro, and he had to leave and take that job the way it works and take the Notre Dame job so that you go to a bowl game and the guy who recruited you, he had been there 4 or 5 years, whatever it is. Now he's not there, and I hate that the NCAA does. I don't like that.
Well, Mike, in support of the NCAA, I must say that while there are over 360 Division I schools, most of the athletes will go pro in something other than sports, and that's what they try to encourage.
Well, this is so I will reword that.
I'm not really
professional sports.
I'm not really supporting that.
Yes.
You know this,
but I also think they should get paid.
Well, that's a whole nother conversation too, and I love that.
Yeah, I think they should get paid. Well, let's get to if you are joining us here today, you're like, what about? Get to the picks. Get to your stuff. Okay, I just want to play one of my favorite moments. I think it's a lot of people's favorite moments. Jim Valvano. So we're talking 1983, and we're talking about North Carolina State, and one of the, it's just college and NCAA sport brings such magic. It really is my favorite thing in the whole world. And when I go back to this game, which was on CBS at the time, they're playing a Houston team. And I believe the highlight we're going to show goes down to like the last 7 seconds, and this one I would say one of the most famous plays, but certainly one of my favorite moments in all of NCAA basketball.
It's down to 7 seconds. You can see the time. Wittenberg. Oh, it's a long ways. They won it. On the dunk.
That's how the tournament ends, and I remember watching it as a kid and thinking, is that Al Pacino on the floor? Hoo-ha! Did we win? Did that go? Did that go in? Wasn't that something? I mean, to me, that was.
I remember my uncle telling me to shut up during the game because I was talking throughout the entire game. Now look at what I do for a living. So it's a whole nother conversation. But Akeem Olajuwon, the way he looked, like he was shocked it was over. He felt like he got shot.
Oh yeah. And
this was a team, Phi Slamma Jamma, that was supposed to win it all. And Valvano, and with the great Gary Bender on the call, if I'm not mistaken, that's who made the call there, talks about Derek Wittenberg pulling up from way out, and Lorenzo Charles, the late Lorenzo Charles, catching the ball and dunking it, and that was the end of the game. It was amazing. I couldn't believe it either.
Yeah, it's the jaw hits the ground because you're not sure if you what you just saw was real.
That was an unreal team.
Yeah.
That team was, Cozell McQueen and guys like that. I remember that team very well from North Carolina State. And they had made their mark outside of what David Thompson and those guys had done in the 70s against UCLA. But this is their opportunity, and they won the title in the most improbable fashion. So,
geez, David Thompson, I haven't heard that name in quite some. He had a vertical. Like, I don't know what they measured it at, but I think he literally could touch the back of the backboard.
Well,
like,
44 or 45 inches vertical, but this guy was dunking on 7-footers with ease, and they called him the Skywalker. And when you look at Denver now and Colorado and their laws against, laws for, I guess, recreational or medicinal things of that nature, the Skywalker took on a whole nother meaning in Denver when David was there. But, one of the guys who influenced Michael Jeffrey Jordan from the same state. So.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot. You're the middle name guy. I forgot about that.
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry, John. So,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Very true. Virginia, number one, some injury problems. So we know that this was just released within the last couple of days. DeAndre Hunter, the ACC six-man, is out for the Cavaliers. Are they still the team that should be headed to the Final Four despite missing a great guy off the bench?
This makes them more vulnerable for sure. I mean, you have a guy that's one of the top players off the bench, the top player off the bench in the country.
Yes.
And with a defensive-minded team that Tony Bennett has down there in Charlottesville, you want to make sure that you have all your parts. He doesn't play a super, super deep bench, but he has guys who help. And I think losing this guy, when they get into offensive funks, it's going to be a problem in the tournament, depending upon who they play. Like, they'll get through the first round for sure.
Sure.
But I think that as they go deeper into the tournament, it's going to be a real problem. And I think that's going to change a lot of brackets that have been put together already.
Okay, let me ask you this. So they'll get by 16, which they probably should.
Let's start. Let's start with the South region. Let's go by region, so we can figure out how this is going to play out. So here we go. Let's start with the South region, which I think, again, you just mentioned Virginia. And so now where the heck did my thing just go? Here we go. So this is an interesting region because you've got a Kentucky that is a 5 seed. And a lot of people are like, well, I guess based on what you saw in the season, but I like what John Calipari said about his team. He said, it basically takes these kids who some of them could still be in high school, and you're playing for 3 months before they not just start to understand how to overcome their opponents, but overcome themselves. And it's the problem I've always had with when I look at college ball is that, the one and done is difficult in maintaining consistency within a program. So Kentucky, the longer they play, the better they get. So Kentucky's a 5, Virginia is a 1, and then you also have Arizona is a 4. So in looking at this, just so you know, I still like Virginia, but you got a Kansas State team that, plays awfully hard. They got to play Creighton in the first round. A lot of people think that Miami may not get out of that game against Loyola, Illinois.
Who says that?
There's a lot of this person. I don't think Miami does. I don't like Miami at all.
Leonard Hamilton will have those guys ready to play, and they will win at least one round in the NCAA tournament. I think they're one of the most underrated teams in the country, to tell you the truth. Like, they are up and down, but Leonard Hamilton has his programs, whether it be Florida State, whether it be Miami, in the tournament almost every year. There's a reason for that.
Well, last year they get embarrassed. So I'm not so sure because I think a lot of people don't see teams like Loyola, Illinois. A lot of people, for instance, wouldn't see probably Nevada because of again they're not a public team. Texas is a public team, but I like Nevada to come out of that too. I think Shaka Smart's a good coach, but I do like Nevada.
He really is, and I think that Texas is shaky. If you're gonna take a pick with a team, that's an 8-9 if I'm not mistaken.
7-10.
7-10.
Yeah, 7-10.
And Nevada's a 10. I would take that.
Nevada's a 7. Nevada's a 7.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, wow, backward then.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's okay.
But no, Nevada can win that game. I don't believe in Texas like that.
I also think that Cincinnati, who's not my favorite team to wager on because I've lost week. So you have to let that go a little bit. Cincinnati, an awfully good team. Georgia State, a really good basketball program. But I've got it coming down if I'm taking a look at that region.
That's Ron Hunter's team, right? You had the kid who.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's
Ron
right.
Hunter's team. So they made a great run about a year or so ago, 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think that happens this year. Cincinnati's one of the best defensive teams in the country. They will grind them into the ground. My little guy, McCronich, I always imagine him talking like a 1920s gangster.
Because he looks that way.
He does.
Yeah, he does.
Put a little big hat on him and he's like, hey, look, guys, we're going to do pressing.
Yeah, we're going to play some defense. See? Yeah.
Coppers, get out of the way. We're going to do our thing here.
How good is Tennessee? Because I've seen them play some pretty good basketball. I think I have them into the Sweet 16 in that region.
That's a lot of praise for Bruce Pearl. Who has a lot of stink on him right now.
But doesn't he always? Yeah.
Now,
I mean,
I would suppose Tennessee is going to be competitive. I don't think they're going to make it Sweet 16, though.
Okay, so let's then switch over now as we go through that and go to let's take a look at the East. So that is Villanova is the one, a group that also in the 8-9, Virginia Tech, Alabama. A lot of people saw Sexton during that tournament just play like a video game. Like, it really was remarkable to watch. He's going to need a lot of that. Virginia Tech can play some pretty good ball, but that was a tough one for me. But then you had West Virginia. They'll probably
Who did you pick in the Alabama Virginia Tech?
I took Vautech. I ended up taking Virginia Tech just because of consistency over that year. Because I think he literally is going to have to do that again. It's hard to be that good all the time and score 30, 40 points.
On that one.
Well, that's tough, too, because either he makes a Kemba Walker run through the NCAA tournament.
And people have talked about that and using that name, too.
Or, look at his stature, what position he plays, that the game is guard-oriented today. So he has an opportunity to do that. But I'm thinking that Virginia Tech understands this. They're going to make sure they double down on him and force the ball out of his hands and make those other guys make plays. And if Alabama's, shout out to Avery Johnson, my guy, if they don't do, if the other guys, the others, don't do their jobs, it'd be a short stay for Alabama in the tournament.
You've got Wichita and Marshall, who actually play some pretty good basketball as well. The Shockers, I do have them moving on. I see them playing West Virginia. That's a tough matchup for them, too. We saw the Wichita Cincinnati game there a couple of weeks ago, where Cincinnati, by definition, and they had to go to Wichita State and play on their floor. That was a Cincinnati game to me. That was just a lot of nasty. That was a lot of grinding it out. If they're going to win games, it's going to look ugly like that. So when I see that matchup, I've got Wichita actually going into the Sweet 16.
Sweet 16, yeah.
And
Villanova.
How good is Villanova for you?
Villanova's good, but can we talk about Wichita State real quick?
Yes.
Because I really do like them. Greg Marshall,
great. Yep.
Run a great program there.
Are you surprised he's still
Shaq
there?
Morrison. No, I'm not. Because there are some guys who understand where their bread is buttered. And I think that Greg Marshall could go to bigger programs, but he's a god in Kansas. And as long as you keep getting that check and you have natural visibility, see, it's not like the old days where you had to go to a major market or like a major school to be visible today. You see guys who are making millions of dollars staying at home, which is odd, but he's in a situation where he's getting recruits that come to Wichita State. I mean, this is what in the name of Antoine Carr is going on in Wichita State. Shout out to Scott Thompson, my old coach at Rice University, who coached there, and I think if I'm not mistaken, he coached there when the Big Show from wrestling was a player for the Wichita State Shockers.
Was he really?
He was.
Paul Wright was a basketball player, right?
Look it up.
That's a big
Look
weight.
it up.
Wow.
No, I don't know if he was that big then.
I was going to say.
I don't know. But I think he played there when Scott was there. So shout out to Scott Thompson.
In that same region, I have Stephen F. Austin as my first major upset, the 14 beating Texas Tech, the Raiders, in the first round. Your thoughts?
Nope.
No? Not going to happen?
Texas is a really good team.
Nope.
Okay.
And
Stephen A. Austin's a good team, a really solid team.
I also have him covering 11 points, obviously.
Yeah.
Oh, you
No,
got,
you know
so
what?
you're sneaking in the gambling. See,
Yeah.
this is where I get into like it's you've got to take a look at straight up, and getting gambling in there can be really confusing. I've done that a couple of years and went, why did I take that?
Right.
Because I was thinking point spread.
Yeah.
Don't think point spread.
No, you can't with that situation. I think Texas Tech is going to be one of those sleeper teams that's going to make it further than a lot of people believe.
I got them going quite a way.
They're 3.
Yeah.
They're 3 for a reason.
Also in that bracket, you've got Arkansas and Butler. That's going to be a very tight game. Interesting, but I guess last night, so you're playing. So the Bonnies get in. They beat a UCLA team that was very typical of what you saw in the Pac-12 this year. Really
Pac-12
inconsistent.
wasn't that good this year.
It was like, at the beginning of the year, I thought, look, I knew how many people after Dylan Brooks, who joined us on the show from time to time, that Oregon didn't have the program. I thought maybe the Huskies at the beginning of the year might have been something, and they just fell off a cliff. And then even Oregon State made a little bit
Well,
of
USC has some pretty good players, and they thought they should have
Well, they're still angry, but I look at the teams that got in. I don't know, USC's pro. I mean, if I'm looking at the Pac-12, it was just a massive fail to me. It was just I wasn't impressed with the ball.
And blame LeVar Ball, because a lot of people are doing that for the UCLA season. I mean, blame him if you want to, but the bottom line was, his son was going to be a great player there anyway, and Steve Alford's team is not that good, regardless. So.
What do you think is going to happen now that the Pac-12 is talking about the one and done? But anyone can talk about the one and done and not like it. But if the NBA doesn't, you'd have to be on the same page, and I don't think they're on the same page.
As far as the
one and done.
Whoa.
Do you think they're going to bring it back and go back to eligibility?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because especially with what's going on with the FBI, because once they turn over some more rocks, and there are more rocks to be turned over. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
We know a lot of guys. Like Ben Simmons made a whole documentary. Like, why do I have to even go to class? You know why I'm here.
Yeah,
it's because the NBA says that I can't go. So they've colluded. The NCAA and the NBA have colluded to make sure that I have to wait a year and help them make some money. So we don't make the NCAA tournament. So what? They still sold my jerseys. They still sold what? So what?
Billions of dollars, folks. Billions of dollars.
And the kids get nothing.
And they get zero. That's why I said, it's got to change. People say, well, why should they get money? I mean, they get a free ride. They get a scholarship. And to me, it's like it doesn't work that way. It's not the same way. Trust me, at some point, this thing has to get a complete, not a facelift, but
you can't change.
overhaul.
No, you have to destroy the NCAA. Yeah. You can't change something that was broken from the start. Since 1959, when Walter Byers said that, so we don't have to pay workers' compensation, who call these athletes student athletes? That's a real thing. That changed the landscape of college athletics forever. Because of that, now they don't have to pay them for their labor. If your whole goal in creating a word, this compound word, if you want to call it that, with a hyphen in it, a hyphenated word, whatever you want to call it, of student athlete, to change the structure where you couldn't get sued for workers' comp, that tells you everything you need to know.
Right.
So
and a lot of people, and there are some programs where I'll be honest, they truly are student athletes. That scholastically, some of them count.
The Harvard of the South, Rice University.
Well, let's lead with that.
Of course, that happens. But as Leo Routens will attest, there's a odd reason why a lot of guys go to that school up in the mountains there in Syracuse. There's nothing there for you other than the great Jim Boeheim. I'm slandering Leo so bad.
Okay, well, you know what?
I'm slandering him. I'll leave him alone.
Let's see if we can make this thing work here, this call, and it just flipped over on me. It just did what it did yesterday. Oh, my God.
Well, I mean, we can still talk about Villanova, which is, to me now, with the injury at Virginia, is probably the best team in the tournament. They have veteran guys who have been there before. They won a title not too long ago with the Chris Jenkins jumper last second, which I think is almost better than the Lorenzo Charles dunk finish because of, it's really on par with those.
Can
right?
Wichita State bump them off the rock there?
Wichita State will give them a problem. Yeah. I like Shaq Morris inside, but I think
because that could be a Sweet 16 matchup.
Villanova's tough inside as well, but Jalen Brunson gives them something. I like Shannon for Wichita State. I like Friend Camp. they have some guys on that team that can help you out, and they have some length, they have some size. Shaq Moore is going to be a problem, but I think that overall Villanova is a better team because they've played against tougher opponents.
I am looking for Leo Routens. It's Mike Richards calling from rawmicrichards.com.
Hey, Michael, you found him.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, just I'm with Will Strickland, and he was talking a little smack about Syracuse, just so you know. Just so you know.
No, that's just not right. That's just not right.
Well, they've got their play-in game, and ASU again, another Pac-12 team that's I don't know. We just talked about the Pac-12 is just grossly underachieved, but maybe they really weren't that good to start with, and of course, when you tie that into FBI investigations, it feels just not that from time to time you don't feel like a program might be a little bit dirty, but this is a little bit bigger than that, Leo. And I just wonder, how far do you think this goes, and what is the effect on all conferences?
I think it's going to go pretty deep. You have to wonder if anything's going to happen during the tournament. There's a lot of rumor that some things may be coming out later in the week or next week. But, unfortunately, this is something that's been going on a long, long time. And the NCAA all of a sudden has this look like, whoa, when did this happen? What's going on here? And that's the worst kept secret in all sports. I can go back to when I was being recruited and the incentives and offers, and you'd be shocked at which coaches did what. And, in a nutshell, here's my position on it, Mike, that coaches cheat. That's your problem. You can blame AAU. You can blame kids looking for a handout. You can blame whatever you want. But coaches cheat. And here's why they cheat. They cheat because they're now in a position more than ever where you win or you're fired. Okay, so the idea of a kid going to college, developing, and becoming an NBA player, that's a scam because the coach doesn't have time for you to develop. Okay, if your development may cost a coach a job. So he wants kids that can come in and win right away, or he will be fired. So the pressure is immense. These guys make a lot of money. This is all worth a lot of money to the schools. And coaches cheat. So my take for years has been very simple. If a coach cheats in any way, shape, or form, he's done. Done. Like no second chance, no like get another job, no taking one program out and having their things vacated and all of a sudden coming back coaching again in another school. No, you're done. And because that to me is the problem is the coaches. And if you take care of that, then that's one step to fixing this problem. But again, there's a lot of other options, but that's just one thing to me that it doesn't make sense.
Well, Leo, this is Will Strickland here, and I was kind of slandering you, but I gave you some love. I didn't say anything about the tan. At least I didn't say that.
So, sorry, it broke up a little bit. Say it again, Will.
I'm saying that I was slandering Syracuse a little bit, slandering you a little bit. Not too badly, though. I didn't talk about the tan, but, if you look at where there's smoke, sometimes there's fire, and I do agree with you that, it's not just the coach, though. I mean, there are boosters. There are a lot of people who are complicit in the whole scheme of these things. Like the coach is not going there and saying, hey, here's $100,000 out of my pocket, Sean Miller. So, how do you police that part of it?
No, that's a great point. And by the way, that tan is natural. I live in Florida when I'm not in Toronto, so let's just get that out of the way there. But,
well, my tan is natural too, Leo, and I don't live in Florida.
I got to work at mine, though. I got to work at mine. But here's it's a big dilemma. It really is because you go back to the UCLA days. What was the guy's name? Sam Gilbert, right?
Yep.
So John Wooden claimed he didn't know anything about anything, and everybody at UCLA was getting paid. And Sam Gilbert was the bag man. So it does go on, and in some respects, schools in the NCAA have also put coaches in a terrible situation because if I'm a coach at a school and I'm at a big time program, and I'll give you an example, like at Syracuse, you got 30,000 people coming to a game. Everybody in the city knows who you are. If one of my players goes to a restaurant and somebody just picks up the tab for him, do you know that the coach is responsible for that?
Yeah.
which is insane. I mean, and there's no way you can possibly control that. And you know, like I said, Syracuse got in a situation like that where they actually have a whole NCAA compliance department on campus, right? It's all on campus. They got an athletic director, they got associate directors, they got a compliance department. But who's punished when a kid does that? The coach, and it makes no sense. You know, it's something. You got all these academic advisors, academic this, academic that. But if a kid doesn't go to class, it's the coach's fault. They got to realize that you're paying these coaches several $1 million or more to do one thing: win basketball games. So, you know, blame the compliance department, blame the academic department. Take a lot of this and you know, have it for what it is. Coaches are there to coach basketball and win games. And by the same token, now we can go to a lot of the kids and say, hey, you know, you might as well start paying these kids because you're bringing kids in from environments that they can't afford, you know, to even go home. Well, obviously somebody's going to get them home. So you're setting them up to cheat right off the top. So it's kind of a vicious circle. But I guess the worst thing about the whole thing that bothers me is that the NCAA acts like it doesn't exist, like it's not happening. This is all, you know, made up. It's just a couple of bad apples, and that's a lot of garbage.
We're in conversation with Leo Routens here on RawMikeRichards.com, the bracketology show brought to you by RCCN in Calgary, our good friends. And, of course, we're taking a look at some of the brackets. And I realize, Leo, of course, you're always very busy with what the Raptors did. By the way, they win again last night. It took a little while, Leo. You know, playing Brooklyn. But, you know, I think this is, in talking about the pros, I think this time of year, this is where, you know, you really kind of need to put away teams like that. And there are nights, I'm sure, where they're feeling pretty good about themselves, but there are still pros on the other side who show up. And it took to about the fourth quarter before the Raps got it done.
Yeah, I mean, everybody would like to say, hey, okay, just dismiss these guys, get it done, and move on to your next city. But you are on the road. You're talking about, if you look at the Nets, they may not have a good record, but they fight people. They scrap and play hard. Kenny Atkins has done a great job with that team, and they pushed the Raptors for a while. But the impressive thing to me is, and the way I look at, hey, you got to win on the road, take it and run, go. But you know, the impressive thing to me is when the Raptors come to play. Okay, and again, 82 games, you can't do it every single night. But when they just step on the floor and say, hey, we're taking this to you, they are really good. And then you see the situation with last night, okay, they got down, but nothing phases these guys. And when all of a sudden they go, okay, we've had enough. They just, all of a sudden, they go from a 2-point game to a 14-point game in minutes. Like it's over, it's done. So the impressive thing is these guys find a way, and they're really good. And obviously, every once in a while, that's going to catch you, especially on the road. But it is an 82-game season, and it's really hard to just have that same intensity or that same fire like you start out against the Houston Rockets at home, you know, in a late season game in Brooklyn.
Leo, this is Will again. When you look at the Raptors right now, and they are the tops of the Eastern Conference, one of the elite teams in the National Basketball Association, what is more important for a team that has playoff experience now? They've gone to the Eastern Conference Finals before. They've been in the playoffs. They have some issues with a team in Ohio in the past. But when you look at this team with a month left in the season, what's more important to you, not just from the analyst standpoint, but from a fan standpoint, to win 60 games or be healthy going into the playoffs?
Oh, definitely healthy. I mean, everybody's an ankle sprain away from disaster. So, my concern is being healthy, and you know, whatever number it takes to finish first in the conference. That's the big one, because you know, home court's going to be, I think, really, really important, especially when you talk about that Ohio team. I don't care what anybody says about those guys. LeBron James still scares the hell out of me. So, I'm hoping that LeBron James and the Cavaliers don't finish in fourth if the Raptors are first. I wouldn't want to meet that team until the finals. But at the same time, I think just securing home court, staying healthy and securing home court would be tremendous. And, you know, by chance, in doing so, this team may very well end up at 60 games. But it's not something I think you want to just chase a number and risk anything simply because being healthy is paramount. And now on the flip side of that, the Raptors are such a deep team, by far the deepest team in the East. And the way they're playing, I mean, you look at rarely do you see guys getting over 30 minutes now. So, that bench has been unique. And so even if they do, have to put the foot on the gas down the stretch, their depth, I think, could be the saving grace to keep everybody healthy outside of, a freak injury, which nobody can avoid.
Hey, Leo, good morning. It's David Bastel here. Let's go back to our NCAA brackets for a second. I'm not going to ask you who you have in the Final Four, but I'm going to ask you if you're looking out for some surprise teams that may win a couple games where a lot of people may not expect it, or somebody that might be turning some heads here in the first couple of days when the tips tomorrow.
Well, I think we're already seeing, how this tournament it can play out. I mean, you got St. Bonaventure beating UCLA, and a lot of people are looking at like that. That's just this big shocker. And I'm not thinking that way. I think you look at the mid majors now. Athleticism has changed across the board. Everybody's got athletes, and some of these bigger schools are the one and dones are changing the impact of the bigger schools, and I think this tournament's a lot more wide open than a lot of people are giving it credit for. There's teams, at the 10 line that, like I look at a Butler. Butler can beat Arkansas. That to me would not be a shocker. You're looking at, Rhode Island's playing Oklahoma, and I think, even though they're ranked higher, how did Oklahoma even get into the tournament?
I think a lot of people feel that way. I think a lot of people feel that way, Leo.
Yeah, I mean, you got obviously Trey Young I think that's why they got in, but I kind of got tired of watching him a little bit down the stretch of the season. It's you can make all the Steph Curry comparisons you want, but that's not really the direction I'm kind of looking at this kid right now. But I think Rhode Island is a team that can create a lot of problems for people. I mean, they're gonna even in a potential matchup with Duke. I mean, they're pretty good. They can push Duke. I think Duke is the type of team that can keep rising up here. But I think teams like Rhode Island are going to push people. You got just looking through here in my bracket. You got a San Diego State is a dangerous team. Mm-hmm. They have a potential matchup with Michigan, and that's a team that they got some athletes and they got some length, and they're a team that plays fast. Michigan with Beeline, they do a great job. I look at Michigan and Beeline a lot like Tony Bennett in Virginia. Those guys are two very, very good coaches, and they do a great job of playing the game they want to play. Their defense can really make a big difference. Like I said, it's really hard to kind of go through the brackets because I'm looking. I can see a lot of teams creating problems. I mean, even at Davidson playing Kentucky in that first round. Don't be surprised if that game comes down to the wire. I mean, all the pressure's on the team like Kentucky, and even though they got a boatload of potential NBA players, Davidson is a team that, again, just plays the right way. Plays the right way and discipline, and in the NCAA with all the pressures on the high seats, things can change in a hurry.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that because I do have Michigan going fairly deep. That run that they've had, and they buried Michigan State when they played them. Michigan State's got some big guys. They can crash the boards as good as anybody, and I think there are a lot of sort of pundits who've got Michigan State going. Well, some of them have a winning actually the national championship. Another team that you mentioned is Kentucky. I certainly like the way that any game they play extra is one game that those kids kind of get better. But I think that Tony Bennett, for me, the job he's done this year with Virginia, the way that they play defense, like it's conceivable when you play Virginia that you never see a good shot, that you never really get a great shot. It's so hard. No one ever, I don't think that everyone was held under 70 points this year on Tony Bennett's team. And we'll see what happens with their six-man out, what the impact of that is. And, there's a couple of schools that, again, people don't see that much. I don't know if you haven't watched a whole bunch. I think Purdue's got a pretty good basketball team as well.
Yeah, they're pretty good. Yeah,
this is going to be a very good tournament, and a lot of people again, they have Xavier kind of going out. But this Michael Porter Jr. What do you make of that? If he's going to come back and play for Mizzou, just what kind of impact can he have? I mean, he's missed an entire season, but some people have them, getting by Florida State in the first round.
Yeah, It's really tough. Watching him play, he just doesn't look anywhere near, what you expect of him and what he's capable of playing. And obviously, he's a guy in high consideration with the NBA. And but talking to some NBA scouts, they say that there's one guy Porter really focuses in on, is cared about, and that's Porter. And it sounds like even NBA guys are looking at him towards the next level, as saying you might want to consider his impact on a locker room. That's not a good thing to hear from an NBA scout. And so when a guy is, is him coming back to a team not being 100%, and you hear that could be really disruptive to them. So they're gonna have their hands full unless he can rise to a level that I just don't see him playing at right now.
Yeah, the Michael Porter Jr. thing is a bad thing all around. I think Missouri had him come back early to feel like they got some worth and value out of him because they know he's going to the next level next year, Leo. And to bring him back and have him have a really poor showing in the NCAA tournament, what you talked about with the scout and how he looks at the locker room, there are a lot of things going against this kid which are pretty bad, and I think he just should have just sat out the entire season. He could have done a Kyrie Irving. He played 11 games at Duke. Do you remember one? No. Ben Simmons didn't make the NCAA tournament. He was the number 1 pick in the draft. So as much as we talk about some of these things that are going on, I think that he's going to be okay at the next level. I just think it was a bad move for them to bring him back. And without basketball, he's not in basketball shape at all. At all. I mean, he's an athlete, but basketball shape and being like in regular shape are two different things altogether. You know this all too well, Leo. So I don't know. It's just a bad look in Missouri right now.
No, I 100% agree with you. You're not going to get, how many guys have we seen their stock rises when they don't play? and I look at, Anthony Bennett is a great example where, he played his last year of college, but then he was injured, didn't have one NBA workout, and he rose all the way up to number 1. Sometimes the best thing you can do is not play and just ride your reputation. And as a young guy, the NBA is all about projecting. So I agree with you. The best thing he could have done is just ride it out and just get healthy and wait for the draft.
Leo, hey, thanks so much for joining us here this morning. I appreciate it, you and your travels, but it's always great to get your perspective. It's one of my favorite times of year. It truly is. Do you have a national champion in your head? Can you divulge the Roughton secret?
Yeah, you know what? Every bracket, I always say this, like the only people that win these brackets are the ones that go, oh, I like those nicknames. Oh, these colors are nice. Because it's like, when I put the best luck I've had when I've done a bracket, okay, is just go with gut. No, a lot of thinking, just gut. Boom, 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 fill up my bracket in like 1 minute. Yeah. And that's the best success I've ever had. So, here's what I did the other day. Like as soon as I just kind of went through it. So I'm still going to ride a little bit with UVA getting to the Final Four, even though I think that injury with Hunter does hurt them. I think Michigan can get to the Final Four. I think Duke can get to the Final Four. And I like Villanova a lot. I like the way they play. They got some championship experience with some of those guys. Brunson's just a stud, and Bridges too. So that's kind of that was my initial, I'm just going to throw it out there, Final Four. So, and once you get there, heck, I don't know. If you could tell me who's going to win, you're better than me. This just, tournament's crazy.
It is the crazy time. Hey, you take care, brother. Thanks so much for calling us today. Always appreciate it. You be safe, and I'll see you when you get home.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Great conversation.
That is Leo Roughton's joining us here this morning and getting his take on it. And you're right. Like Dan Schulman, who, how many times did he join us over the years?
Yeah, weekly.
Yeah, saying that he goes, Mike,
one of the great voices in the history of this sport.
I call all the games, and I'm terrible at this. And it's true because it's like these guys and Dick Vitale, they do all the games, they watch the games, they're conferences, where the Sun Belt or the Colonial. I mean, they're all over the place, and then you overthink it. And then you overthink it.
Colonial.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Patriot League.
Yeah, we can
do your thing.
We'll talk about Drexel if you want. Do what you want. But there you have it. Again, it's why in the office pools, like those people are like, I like the color blue. What does that mean? Well, sometimes these are the people that win. Now, let's get back to Michigan. In fact, let's go to that region because we have not done that yet. And that is, let me just make sure I get it up. That is the region where the number one
Xavier.
Is Xavier. So here's the thing, too. A lot of people looking at Xavier thinking of the 4 regional number ones that Xavier might be one of the weaker ones. But let's take a look. So Xavier's the number 1. That's also where Mizzou actually ends up getting. So that's the 8-9 spot with Florida State. They have Ohio State and San Diego. Or sorry, that's South Dakota State that they have.
That's a 12-5.
And Ohio State, I saw them play. This was not a typical. This is not a strong Ohio State team.
No.
But I was really, Gonzaga's Gonzaga. Boy, I'll tell you, it's a consistent program. Houston has San Diego State. Houston better be careful in that first round. Michigan has Montana. You've got Texas A&M and Providence. I'll tell you what. The Friars ruined a lot of teams' aspirations this year. They play some very good basketball. If I'm Texas A&M, if I'm the Aggies, I don't know how much I'm looking forward to that game. I got Providence moving on, and then finally have the Tar Heels. But Michigan once again played some outstanding basketball down that stretch.
Well, first off, I think you're dead on with Ed Cooley's Providence team. I think that they're going to cause some problems in the tournament for sure. I don't trust North Carolina. I don't know why.
Because they haven't been consistent. That's why. I mean, I still think I still think they can be there because that's kind of who they are. But I'll be honest, they've been inconsistent like everybody else.
Gummit. I got to get my Roy Williams in before. So I don't trust them. Of course, you look at Xavier, and I think that the program there, Chris Mack's program, is a really good program. And I don't know why people are so down on them. They play in a really tough conference. I mean, when every other week you're playing Creighton, you're playing Villanova, you're playing Cincinnati, you're playing some really tough teams. You're getting tournament ready. Mm-hmm. And I think that at the end of the day, shooting is going to be their issue. They have some really good big men inside. I don't think they rebound like they should. And I think they get into foul trouble in a hurry, and then they rush some things. So that's where they're maybe a little shaky. But, of course, when you talk about John Beilein, you talk about Tony Bennett, you talk about the quality of defense teams like Cincinnati and Virginia and Michigan play. Michigan's defense is one of the best defenses. They don't turn the ball over. They don't beat themselves. They're a very disciplined team. They run their sets. They have, a guy who's going to definitely be in the NBA, Mo Wagner. You have really good bench play from these guys. You have senior leadership. You just have a solid team at Michigan. Of course, as I'm always apt to more for football than anything else, but I'm still a Fab Five guy, and it's always about the go blue know it, and I think that Michigan's going to make a great run, and suffice it to say, when we get to our Final Four and our picks, they might be somewhere in that mix. I'm just saying. I've
got them playing North Carolina, which is going to be a big matchup, and that's where I kind of flipped the coin a little bit because I don't think Roy Williams had hey, these coaches know year to year where they sit with the recruits they got, with the season that they had. You're not going to find a lot of coaches doing a lot of bragging. Really, that's the one thing that I really enjoy about college basketball is they know what they've got. So I do have North Carolina knocking off Michigan, but that's a coin flip to me. I could go down on that one. As North Carolina, as I mentioned, not as strong. But Gonzaga, I do have them going through. I think if they meet Xavier, that Gonzaga would go through. Now, let's take a break here for a second, too, as well. Gus Johnson is one of those guys that I love his calls. They're fantastic. But if I'm a head coach and I'm walking on the floor and I want to have a game where there's a lot of control, but there's not a lot of surprises, if I look down the scorers table and in the play-by-play I see that Gus Johnson's doing one of my games, I'm going to be nervous because he has the craziest calls, the craziest games of all time. So here is who I think is just really one of the best in the business. His calls are tremendous. When it comes to NCAA basketball, and again, this will be property of NCAA, here are some moments with the legend Gus Johnson.
And we're tied 75 again. Isaiah, shot clock turned off. Game clock at 8. He's going to do it himself. Thomas, shake, crossover, step back, and deposit, Young, safe, and Washington wins it. second J. Cold-blooded.
Hall, 8 to shoot. Hall, the runner. Loose ball. It's good. With 4.4 to go. Shannon.
Don't want to foul.
Shannon from the corner. And it's over. Gonzaga. The slipper still fits. They win it. 73-72.
Chicago at 69%. They throw it to Morrison. He holds on. We don't want to foul Morrison. You make him get it over half court. You know you got to foul. And it's there. Foul ball. Inside. The freshman. Last chance to get.
There it is. Just some of the magic. Gus Johnson makes some of those calls, and you just, I mean, that was the UCLA Gonzaga game.
Yeah.
Adam Morrison. Again, what stuck with me that year, because I'm living in Calgary at the time, and I thought that the Gonzaga, I was not a fan. I thought when they play at home they get way too many breaks from the refs. They play like thugs. but you had Adam Morrison that everyone thought was the greatest player, and the scout said, Adam Morrison, he said, this is a pro scout. He couldn't guard a guy with a badge and a gun. and I still remember that, because there was no career after that. I mean, that, and again, and the one thing that makes NCAA sports special is just take it for those moments that they are.
Yeah.
They're not all going to go on to be Hall of Fame careers. It might be just that. Christian Laettner, I mean, there's another example. But you can go down the list. It's not a knock, because if you're in those families, if it's a family who's attended Ole Miss for like the last 5 generations, your son goes to a bowl game and catches the big ball. That's it. That is a family moment that goes in that family tree forever, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at some of these calls, and Gus Johnson can make reading the menu sound great. Let's be honest. I enjoy Gus doing these games and the energy he gives to it. But you look at some of the teams that we're talking about, and hopefully he's calling some of these great games that we want to see. You know, I'm sure he's going to call some games. He'll make – what's the team? You know what I think is going to be a surprise is Houston. You talked about Houston.
Yeah.
I think Houston's going to make it in a play against Michigan.
Do you think they're going to beat San Diego State?
Yes, I do.
Really?
Yes,
I got
do.
San Diego State.
The way they play in their conference tournament, they really play great down the stretch. They have I can't remember what's his name, Rob Jones. They have athletes in the front line. Kelvin Sampson has his team. They're going to be ready for the tournament. I hope Gus is calling that game, because his kid Rob Jones shoots from anywhere. He's a really electrifying player for them, and it's been a long time since a Rice Owl has said something good about a Houston Cougar.
I was going to say, this is a moment
Just so
here.
you know.
Wow.
Shout out to Clyde Drexler, my man, Clyde.
Clyde.
We've had some conversations about issues we've had in the past.
They played Cincinnati well in that last game.
They really did. And I
But-
think because
and they
their
had
ability to score.
And they had an opportunity at the end, which they kind of muffed it up,
Well,
moving the ball up court. Right?
yeah.
I mean,
Let's move now.
They came back from behind too.
True,
So you look at that, and I see. Really, you talked about Gonzaga and them being thugs. Mark Few's run a great program there in Spokane.
A lot of Canadians go down. A lot of kids from Montreal go down.
Yeah,
there.
yeah. And I think they're going to get there, and they're going to play Michigan. I think they're going to end up playing Michigan deep in that bracket. And I do believe that Michigan is a better overall team and will beat them. Maybe there's some bias in there, but I really believe that a team that doesn't turn the ball over, that runs their sets,
They
and
give
plays
themselves a
great
chance.
defense, always give themselves a chance in a tournament like this.
Looking at the Midwest now, there's a lot of. I mean, you got Kentucky in here. Sometimes in soccer they talk about the group of death, Dave, as you know. This thing is, there are some games in there that might. I mean, I'm hoping it's not better than the Final Four and the Final Championship, but the way it looks, and we just talked about actually Rhode Island a little bit, how good they are. But if it plays out, you could see Duke and Michigan State meeting, and that's going to be that's a Sweet 16 matchup if that happens. I mean, that's normally a Final Four or a caliber of a national championship. That is a tough one. Kansas is going to have I mean, look, they got a lot of teams they got to get by, and it's at New Mexico State. Love the way I don't like Auburn. Auburn, I think, finished really poorly down the stretch. I mean, what was it the College of Charleston's going to play them?
Don't sleep in the College of Charleston.
Yeah, no, I'm saying Auburn better be careful because they could be going home early.
Yeah, and the sleeper team in that bracket, to me, is going to sound crazy, is a football school, Clemson. Remember I said this.
Interesting.
That's a 12-5, too, against New Mexico State.
Clemson is going to beat New Mexico State. They're going to beat Auburn because I think Auburn will do enough to beat Charleston. They're going to beat them and end up facing either a Michigan State or Duke in that bracket.
Wait. They're good. So you have them. You have Clemson beating Kansas?
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
Kansas is shaky, and Bill Self will tell you.
Yeah, Kansas
is shaky.
This is not a year where you look at. I mean, again, Virginia, I look that way from almost the beginning because the kind of ball they play, the kind of coach they have, it tends to win championships. But everybody else, including Duke,
Devontae Graham and McCalluke, the other guard in the backcourt for Kansas, that's all they have. He does not play a deep bench, and when one of them gets in foul trouble, it's a wrap in Kansas, and they know it. And Bill Self knows it too. And this is why I'm saying that Kansas is prime. They're primed to get beat
Could
early.
Seton Hall beat Kansas
Absolutely.
in the second round?
Absolutely. I can see that happening. But even if they don't make it that far, I look at some of the teams that are in that bracket, and I just don't believe in Kansas that much.
Okay, I got to show you a couple of things. Now, Arizona State plays tonight, and as I said, Duke, they have Iona in Iona again for a team that sometimes can score points in their league. They're the team that I always get excited about. I don't know why I get excited about Iona, but I do.
Jeff Rulin is rolling in his grave.
And they always
you have to be a basketball fan to know this. Trust me.
They always hurt me. But okay, so here's what. Did you ever, when you played at Rice, and schools are doing, it's more over the top now than it used to be. Were you really bothered by any particular school that you had to go to where distraction at the foul line was an issue for you, or was it never an issue for you?
No, because we weren't that good.
So you were never under the big pressure.
I mean, we want to win.
Yeah.
I mean, we were good enough. We competed, especially my freshman year. You know, we had a conference that had, Arkansas when they were at their peak with Nolan Richardson and Todd Day and Lee Mayberry, Oliver Miller, and those guys.
Wow.
But that's probably the toughest place to play, the old Barnhill Arena. So you could have some issues with the coaches talking to you. You could hear Nolan everywhere. The fans were obnoxious. Their bleachers were like vertical, so they were like screaming down on top of you. And you hear that pig suey call. Like, I mean, so there's a lot going on there. But I think at a certain point, like these kids have played so many games on the road from AAU and everything else that part of it that's really a part of it now. They don't really think about that in the same way that we did, because we didn't have the depth of playing those games on the road and the kind of pressure situations. But I think that, you can find some places that if you're creative, in your egging on the sideline, you can create some distraction.
Okay, speaking of creating distraction, property of, I'm sure, the Pac-12 and NCAA, how about the curtain of distraction that they have started at ASU, which before they go to the foul line, these kids bring this stupid curtain underneath. And, there have been some big-time rappers that show up in this thing. Michael Phelps has shown up with no shirt on this thing. They call it, courtesy of Arizona State University, what if you're the line and you get the curtain of distraction?
Unique things today. I mean, how about this? Some mayonnaise here, lad.
Are you distracted by this? I am. I'm disturbed by that.
Yeah, I would say more disturbed than distracted.
Now, does it ever work? Well, ESPN did actually a series on this one guy. He did it once. They called him Speedo Guy. And so it is at Duke. And you know how crammed that field house
Cameron
is.
Indoor.
And so, of course, it's get the Tar Heels. I mean, who else is this going to be up against? There's a guy they call Viking Sam or something like that, and he's the one. And of course, because the student body's right behind it, and they have over the years they've had waving, they choreograph, they do stuff. This time he said, just follow me, and when I do this at the free throw line, and they waited for a specific player at the free throw line, everyone just get down. The reason, because some guy is going to rip off his clothes and do a not very erotic dance with the Speedo in hopes that it will distract North Carolina. And just so you know, spoiler alert, it worked.
Strike. Carolina with a 3-point lead, 8:28 to go.
He's up in the left.
Manuel misses the first.
Jackie, an outstanding defensive player, a stopper on a defense.
He is the only one. obviously in a Speedo, gyrating. He's still doing it, by the way. You just can't see it. It's in the upper left-hand corner when you're watching the show.
You would have thought, watching them play, Mike, they'd never be sitting at 11-9. But then again, didn't know about the injury happening for Sean May. Carolina 1 of 4.
He misses both. They go and talk to him afterwards in the game. Said, it really was disturbing. He goes,
oh, did he say that?
Oh,
really?
He goes, we're not supposed to say that. He
Can't
goes,
believe he admitted it.
He goes, I just couldn't stop thinking about it because it was so disturbing.
That'll beg a couple of different questions. If it's sexist, because maybe he, or he has some issues that I wouldn't say issues, but like some questions about things that he never really questioned about himself before. Who knows? And that's okay.
This day and age,
okay.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. Okay, so let's get to this. The magic of your Final Four and your champions. And I thought, do we actually do this? Well, if people are going to watch, they want to see this today. So here's who I have in my Final Four. And by the way, if you're in my bracket, right, if you're in the Raw Mike Richards Challenge, you're allowed 2. You're allowed 2, not 25 like some people do. Seriously. Okay. My Final Four is this. University of Virginia gets in. I have North Carolina on the other side. Then I have Villanova and Duke as my Final Four. Villanova playing Virginia for a national championship, and I have Virginia as my national champion. Well, he's looking at me. He's not. I
mean, it sounds good.
It's heated. It's heated now in the panel.
No. I mean, you have some solid picks, and I think that a lot of people are going to go that route. It's an easy bake pick to pick Villanova or Virginia right now. And who wouldn't? Why would you want to complicate something like this? But again, I think this is one of the most compelling seasons of March Madness and NCAA men's basketball.
It's open, man. It really is open.
Very,
it's
very
open.
long time.
Yeah.
And I look at my Final Four, and I went easy bake with Villanova.
Yes.
They're going to end up facing Blue Know It, the University of Michigan. John Beilein, a great game. I went beyond and started talking about the national championship game. But
I was going to say
Virginia. No, Michigan beats Virginia.
Wow.
In a great game.
Wow.
Because of that injury.
That's a tight game then. That's going to be a tight game, low-scoring game.
But I think it's going to be like a 63 to 54 game, something like that. At the end of lots of free throws by Michigan at the end, who's not a great free throw shooting team. And you have to think about that.
And that
Might
counts.
be closer.
It counts.
That might be closer.
Yeah.
And then I look at Villanova playing Michigan State.
That's my Final Four.
Michigan State. People love Michigan State.
I have a thing with Miles Bridges. Sometimes I trust him and sometimes I don't. And I don't know if he's that guy. I look at a guy and you look at what they do in college and you go, he's going to be projected as great pro, whatever. And this is, for some, is going to be a knock against Andrew Christian Wiggins. But to be fair to him, everyone wanted to see that motor in university. He had Joel Embiid on his team.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do anything. He gets to the pros. Joel Embiid makes the All-Star game before him. And he's in his 4th year in the league. I have this corollary because this is what I do. If you're a one-and-done player, you're 19 coming out into the NBA, you have 5 years to become who you're going to become in the National Basketball Association. Andrew Wiggins with his injury to Jimmy Butler. And the fact that they traded for Jimmy Butler and Jimmy Butler became the guy in their team tells me a whole lot about Andrew Wiggins. I like him. He's a nice kid, but maybe he's made to be a 3rd or 4th banana. It's just what it is.
Yeah.
So the same thing with Miles Bridges. And that's why I can't trust him in the NCAA tournament. Michigan State has a solid team. Tom Izzo's going to always have you ready.
He's always going to coach his guys.
Be rugged. But Miles Bridges is the difference between whether they win late in this tournament or lose early. And Miles Bridges has to show up. He's going to show up for at least 2 games. But when it gets tough, how's he going to perform when they have an opportunity to go to the finals? And I actually have, I did have initially in my final in my mind, Michigan versus Michigan State. That would have been ideal.
That'd be crazy.
Crazy.
But I thought better of it because I think Villanova just has a better overall team. I like DiVincenzo, the Big Ragu. That's what they call him. I like Jalen Brunson, who's a Player of the Year candidate, and the son of a former NBA player, Rick Brunson. He's really their coach. Mikal Bridges. They just have a lot. Pascal. They have a lot of guys, and I just think they beat Michigan State because Miles Bridges is not that guy.
So your final.
Michigan versus Villanova and the eventual champions.
Michigan.
I'm taking Michigan.
Oh, you.
I'm taking Michigan.
Oh.
I'm taking Michigan. I'm trusting Mo Wagner. I'm trusting John Beilein. I just feel very confident. I mean, they've been there before with John Beilein.
Hey, it's not like you.
Should they be the NCAA champions because of Slick Rick or Ricky Three Stacks, whatever you want to call him? And Louisville beat them in that final with Trey Burke.
Right.
Trey Burke was the National Player of the Year that year. They had to vacate those wins, then they had to vacate the title, and they said it's empty now or vacated. No, Michigan's the champion. As far as I'm concerned,
I see.
Michigan's the champion.
I didn't hear that on the news, but
no, they talked to me first.
They
need to talk to me.
They will. All right, Dave.
Okay, so this is this is exactly what Will said, but I have a little different final. So I have Virginia facing Michigan. Virginia wins that matchup. I have Villanova facing Michigan State. Michigan State wins that matchup. Virginia is my champion. I got the Cavaliers.
Even with the injury?
And there it is.
You trust them that much?
I'm trusting
Yeah,
them
Why,
that
I
much.
still do.
Why do you believe that Virginia could beat Michigan State without what's his name? DeAndre
Hunter.
Hunter off
Will,
the bench.
You're talking to a guy that has watched 6 NCAA games in the last 2 weeks, 0 during the regular season, and I am throwing darts, my friend.
Like
I watch.
Yeah.
I watch the games. I'm a big East fan. I've always been a big East fan since that network that calls themselves the Entertainment and Sports Programming Network.
Yes.
Began in September of 1979, and we had to struggle to get that cable. The Big East, Dave Gavitt, shout out to Dave Gavitt, the late Dave Gavitt. The Big East has always been a conference I followed. I thought it was a travesty they eliminated it and then brought it back, but they're here. They have some really
Good
great
30 for
tough
32,
teams.
by the way, on a side
Yeah,
note.
one of the greatest.
Yeah.
And I just believe that you look at some of these teams, you look at their programs and their makeup and their history. Like there's something to be said for a tournament where no one knows who's going to win this thing.
So engaging.
And
So engaging.
Villanova, from Riley Massimino to Jay Wright winning his first title, they may be on the verge of winning another one. But I just feel like, look at them, you look at Virginia and these injuries and everything else. I just believe a team that's playing so well going into the finals or into the tournament like Michigan is going to make I know they want to play right after the Big Ten tournament.
They were flying.
I don't believe in Purdue, by the way, so you and Leo can get out of here with that.
All right.
They
Yeah,
throw the
Michigan
ball
rolled
too much
all
in
over
the
them.
Lucas
Yeah.
Haas. They are
Hostile.
one-trick ponies. One-trick ponies. That's it.
Okay.
They have one thing to do. But I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. And no one else is going to pick my pick. I know that. Except
What makes
for everyone
Will
in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
People in Ann Arbor and former University of Michigan grads.
And my cousin John. I'm sure my cousin
Is he a
John.
big Michigan?
Huge.
I mean,
It's
I
very
love to know
annoying.
what people think and what they. I mean, most people are going to say Virginia. Most people are going to say Villanova. I just feel like that's easy bake pick. And I'm not picking Michigan to be contrarian. They have qualities and metrics that speak to me in a way for this tournament that makes sense.
That's why I do like the conference tournaments. I know some people don't buy into it. They don't believe it. They don't think it's that important. I think as long as you're wearing your school's jersey, I think it all counts.
Yeah.
And I think if you are the kinds of team that didn't maybe have the kind of consistency that you wanted at the beginning of the year, like Kentucky, I'll throw them in that mix as well. All of a sudden you get it together like Michigan did. What that tournament didn't mean anything to them? I think it meant everything to them.
I mean, you could hear it in what they were saying when Mo Wagner was interviewed at the end of the game. We really came together. We're a close team. We understand what this thing is about now, and it goes back to what you were saying about John Calipari and his team and those young guys trying to figure it out.
Sure.
That they figured out certain things about what makes them successful as a unit, not what makes them successful as individuals. And now that they see that and they see the value in that, and they saw they've run over teams that were, more vaunted than they were vaunted Michigan State, whatever. This Purdue, whatever. It didn't matter who was in front of them, and they beat them. And that momentum going to the tournament.
See, they can be dangerous too because they're starting to understand just how good they can be.
Yeah.
We have to run, my friend. Thanks so much for coming in. A great job.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure, bud.
Big Blue. There you go.
Our friend Tony Lucisano, by the way, just texted me during the show to say hi to Big Will. So I got to send that out to you.
Dude's my guy.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Here we go.
Whoa. What?
That was awesome today. I loved it.
Become best friends. Yep.
Karate in the garage.
You want to go do karate in the garage? Yep.
Yes.
It's time.
Will Strickland joining us today in studio for your bracketology. Hopefully you got a lot from it. At the end of the day, it's still a little bit of throwing darts. It's a little bit of luck, but that's what makes the tournament great. When you see some team, I don't know, as you said, the College of Charleston. What? Well, if you saw how they play, they're a pretty good team. There's a lot of good programs in this country, and sometimes they save it for that moment.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Also, Leo Routen's our good friend, traveling around, still joins us for the show. That was fantastic. We appreciate it. If you want to join and get in on the Raw Mike Richard Challenge, make sure when I put it out there on Twitter, fill in that bracket. Have yourself a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.